Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, the show where everything and anything can and will be sorted. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Brice.
And how do you feel about that?
I feel fairly good. I mean, like, intonation was normal, consistent, not necessarily... I mean, I'm always a little anxious, but, like, that's fine.
Tell me about your father.
The basic conceit of our show is that we have a guest who is knowledgeable or a fan of a topic, and then we sort subsets within that topic into the various houses of Hogwarts. Today, we are joined by Rena Hundert. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me join you.
Not Michael's father. Okay.
Sorry. That was deflection. For those unfamiliar with Rena, she is a comedian, singer, playwright in the Los Angeles area. She also participates in Broke LA and is a roast battler of sorts.
Yeah.
Were there any other things that should be worth mentioning in your long list of credits?
No.
No? Okay.
No, please.
The best part about this, in introducing Rena, there was like... She's holding her hands, and there was like an active wringing of the hands as I listed her credits.
So uncomfortable hearing about myself.
Well,
yeah, me too. Like every time the police are involved, and they're like, "Read you what?" just describing my. Anyway, what's going on?
So today we're going to be doing a bit of a dive into psychology. We're going to be sorting within the internal family systems. Now, Rena, what is your background with psychology and specifically IFS, if that's the abbrev of it?
It is the abbrev, and they have like conferences and stuff. It's a little bit of a cult, but my mom basically does the job of a therapist, so I grew up being accosted about my feelings and having
When you say basically does the job of a therapist,
she's a mom. No, I'm just kidding. She has a degree, and her degree is actually in social work, but her job is to be a counselor for students at McGill University. Mm-hmm. So that's basically talk therapy. Like she just doesn't have her degree specifically in that. It's in social work. She's the exception to the rule at her job.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
But, she's had to learn a lot on the fly and just practice.
And through the simple, osmosis, you have sort of...
Well, I was a victim to a lot of talks about feelings and over-talking about feelings growing up, which she will definitely attest to. She's definitely someone who thinks you have to talk out every negative feeling, which I've since grown out of and realized that focusing too much on the negative feelings just kind of makes them grow and become bigger issues in your life. And I've seen a lot of therapists. I'm Jewish. I've seen a lot of therapists. I'm Jewish. I said that twice. And I also have two uncles. So I have an uncle on either side of the family that both independently became very enthusiastic about the IFS model. So one of them was a therapist always. And then the other one was like a vice president of a shipping company, but he got his another master's degree while working. And then it has since got rid of that job and is practicing talk therapy in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
He's like my favorite, well, not my favorite uncle. I love all my uncles, but he would take me on canoe
trips. They all listen to our podcast.
The other uncle right now is like, son of a gun.
Oh, good God, the battle of the uncles. No, they're all actually awesome. I've really been lucky with my uncles, but this one used to take me on a canoe trip every year. He's kind of like the single cool uncle.
Yeah. The one who gives you $5 and you're just like, why am I getting this? And they're like, because I'm your uncle.
Yeah. Or the one that we would drink booze together. I was little and I could eat bacon with him.
Was he the one who offered you the first tip of the sip into the world of alcohol?
Unfortunately, I started much younger than that.
But he was just the one who was recreational drinking.
He used to call it hooch, and we'd all drink it on the canoe trip. He started taking me on the canoe trip when I was 10, and we're both the youngest in our families. So he said,
was what he was shipping bootleg alcohol?
I think he just liked making it feel bootleg.
Yeah,
I like the idea that your uncle is like a time traveler, so he's shipping it back in time to the Depression.
Oh man, that's Yeah, why aren't more time travelers doing that? Just sending contraband
That's
back.
the lucrative business model that we've all been missing.
Is it though? Because inflation has kind of downgraded the amount that the money would be worth in the end.
But if you're getting currency from then and investing it directly, or those bills
if you
might
invest
be,
it back then, yes.
Once you're there, you might as well just be
No, you're
putting
right.
it into like stocks and bonds over
Right.
there. You've got the up and up on it. That's far away outside of the scope of what we should be talking about right now.
You should just get a suitcase of money and send it back in time.
I mean,
hold on. Then the print wouldn't make sense.
No.
Or just do the Back to the Future thing and
Right.
just bet on stuff that you know is going to happen.
Yeah, the almanac is like the way to go. As
I
far
would
as,
somehow I would think that my plan was perfect, and then I would execute it, and then as soon as I was back in time, usually probably like a one-way trip, then I would realize like, oh wait, none of this money is good because it's all printed after everybody has already died in this
right.
time.
Most of the plans of I'm going to go back in time and do whatever is very quickly thwarted by like one item that you failed to realize. Like I forget which comedian it was, but basically he's like, the call out was that the patriarchy is very much a thing. So it's like, if you're a woman and you're going back in time, you're already in trouble.
Yeah.
Like,
that's so true. Well, I'd have to Yentl it.
yeah, like it's just there's
I'd be
those.
so down, to Yentl it.
But dealing with internal family systems. Now, Rena, you had mentioned off mic beforehand that there are 3 sort of subsets, or I suppose you need to
Yeah.
explain what internal family systems is
Okay.
before we even
So,
into that.
yeah, let's start. So basically, it's the idea that within all of us we have different parts,
Mhm.
and those parts have different personalities. So it's not that you have multiple personality disorder. It's just that you have different parts of yourself. With it is kind of like the multiple personality disorder. I don't know. It's just that like when you're having an unhealthy instinct, that you can have a dialogue with that part of yourself and see what it wants or what it's trying to protect or what its motivation is. And then find like a healthier way potentially of giving it what it wants, or maybe letting it know that, you're not 6 years old anymore and you're not powerless like that anymore. There's like reconciling between the parts. So it's kind of like having a dialogue with yourself is like a group meeting of a community. That's all you.
So it's Pixar's Inside Out.
Yeah. I mean, I actually wrote a play based on the model before that movie came out, which was a lot darker. But then the movie came out and someone who had seen the play was like, you have to see this because that's what you were doing. It's similar, but it's not the same.
Gotcha.
Is it like,
Yeah.
is the purpose of this sort of thing like by disassociating yourself a little bit that way, is it supposed to be just so you can give yourself more pragmatic?
It's not pragmatic. I guess I'd say it's more like present.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
'Cause
Pragmatic would be another one of the parts.
I see.
There's like certain parts that are kind of under the umbrella of pragmatism, more under the umbrella of pragmatism, because that's also a defense mechanism to be
Yeah.
pragmatic, rather than present.
It's the one that I often fall victim to.
Right.
'Cause
Me
that's,
too.
That's just my Ravenclaw like assholishness, I suppose. So all right, then I guess let's get into these parts.
The parts?
Yes.
Okay. So classically, although like it is good if you're doing talk therapy with someone to let them give their own names, because sometimes these words don't mean the same thing to the same people. But in his book, like I guess you could say the overarching names for stuff is you have the managers, the exiles, and the firefighters. So the exiles they're what they sound like. So they're parts of yourselves they've been exiled in moments of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, let's say something happened to you that was traumatic and the rest of you doesn't want to deal with those feelings. They'll just like exile that part and be like, you go over there and like be that age forever and just deal with that alone. Like basically the managers and the firefighters are trying to keep the exiles out. To not be overwhelmed with the trauma.
So the exiles are
whatever your repression.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So they're repressed memories, instances
Of trauma. And they don't know that you've aged or grown out of that, or you know what I mean?
Okay. So they're also like
they're frozen in time. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So then within that, are there any subsections like within, or like are there any subsets within exile, or is it just like?
Oh, that's it. I mean, that would depend on the individual.
Okay,
you know?
that's a case by case basis.
I think so. Yeah, it's like we're all our own galaxy, so it's like I don't know. What does yours look like?
That's fair. So then, okay. So we have 3 types. We're starting with exiles then, I suppose.
I guess, yeah.
Exile. Now, not to be like alluding to, but also needing some degree, while obviously we can have overlap as far as how we're sorting things. Oh, I forgot to ask even before we started. Rena, do you know what house you're in as far as Harry Potter sorting goes?
I don't know. I've been told Hufflepuff.
That seems about correct.
Yeah.
You seem like the same kind of dork as me.
We were just so excited to start recording, we failed to even ask you that.
I don't feel comfortable self-diagnosing, so I don't know.
Okay,
I'm definitely not Slytherin.
Let's. I'm gonna turn to the audience of as you are listening. Send us which house you think that Rena is in with hashtag Rena sorted. Rena spelled RENA.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll get to the bottom
That's
of
your
this, don't
sorting
worry.
hat homework for this week.
As for exiles, so is this going to be like all of the really vulnerable stuff that's hard for you to talk about? Like every part of you that's just like ever been like, well, I don't know if I can ever actually deal with this.
Yeah, it's a part of you that like when it's activated, you feel emotionally out of control. Like
I see.
And then the firefighters and the managers come in to try to like snuff that out.
Gotcha.
Like, so that
I mean, based on that, I feel that it's exiles, not Ravenclaw. Because there's the pragmatism that we sort of were discussing before that Ravenclaws are more prone to exhibit. Are you leaning one way or another, Reed, as far as sorting goes, or are you still sort of assessing?
So is the way that it's the exile expresses itself, is that even how like would it be like because you said it's mostly, it seems like younger and stuff like that. Is it expressing itself in like more immature ways? Is it not necessarily like the clearest of the selves?
Well, the weird thing is like the parts can transform as you communicate with them. So it's like sometimes an exile can come across like a big scary monster, but then once you talk to it a bit, you realize it's just a baby like crying. You know?
I see.
So it's like it seems a lot scarier because you built up these defenses. It often seems a lot more menacing than it actually is.
I like your 20 questions approach on this one, Reed. The way that you're like just like inquiring to get us closer.
You mean interviewing?
Solid roast. Solid.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm interested, and so I ask.
I don't understand what that means. Now, do you, based off of that and perhaps the like facade being presented, do you think that's a trait associated with a Hufflepuff at all? Because initially I was thinking that the exile might be a Hufflepuff in nature, but I do feel that like that that degree of defense and perhaps like fronts being placed up might actually skew at Slytherin.
Oh yeah, I definitely think this is a Slytherin because like this means nothing to you by your eyes, Rena, but basically it's just like, oh yeah, because Slytherins, when they operate less successfully, what are they operating usually out of? Fear and vulnerability, because like there's a lot of insecurity in trying to like keep up a level of poise and presentation and image is very important. So I could definitely see like in a pinch, a Slytherin is the one who's gonna like revert back to like childhood tactics to deal with things.
I suppose that's very fair.
Yeah.
That is very fair. Let's now shift, unless there's more to say on Exiles.
No, I like that assessment. Yeah, that's good.
Shall we shift to firefighters?
Sure. Okay, so firefighters are like the sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Because they are the sexiest of all people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a calendar,
There's chili cook-offs.
I feel like there are chili cook-offs and calendars associated with everything
red.
now,
They
though.
wear the color red. There's
Yeah.
like lots of red stuff.
The most sexy people.
It's worth noting when Reed said that, they threw their
hands
arms up
in the air like I was addressing a crowd.
Yes.
But there's two people in the room.
We're a crowd. For LA comedy, we're a crowd.
The rules do change
Yes,
in the
they
LA
do.
comedy
I'm surprised
scene.
both of you are listening.
It's a challenge. No, I'm
So
just kidding.
yeah, so what do you mean by they're like the sex, drugs,
Okay,
rock
so
and roll?
it's what it sounds like. So it's like if the exile is the fire, the firefighter is just trying to put it out immediately with anything, just like immediate tactics. So like sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Gotcha.
You know,
Oh,
you're
so
just
they're
trying
just
to
like
put it out.
they're just like quick. Let's quickly
like,
cover
boom.
this. We gotta get.
Yeah,
so they're
yeah.
like the action hero.
Whatever's gonna shut it out,
Go
yeah.
in guns blazing sort.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'm already starting to become more confused than I thought I was about the whole concept of this. So I'd actually like you to take this back for a moment
Okay.
before we go a little further.
Sure.
So in the way that IFS is supposed to be implemented is that in a moment of crisis, you're supposed to like sort of stop and assess who's in control. Is that the idea?
No. Not saying that's wrong. Sure, that could be good too. Probably later on.
But if I'm wrong, like
that sounds a bit more like cognitive behavioral therapy to me.
oh,
but,
okay.
Which is like, I don't think it works, but I'm glad if it works for you. Don't listen to me. I have problems. No, it's basically like within talk therapy, like it's like, let's say all these parts are like the layers of an onion. You're just trying to like uncover
Okay, so we're
them.
going with Shrek references.
Shrek references
Yeah.
or onion references. So
Just to keep it academic.
Mhm.
yeah, very academic. My dad's an academic. So you're trying to peel back to get to just self, which is just like presence. It's what's underneath everything.
Sure.
So it's like if you can have self leadership, then yeah, I guess to get you would try to get to the self in moments when you're triggered and see what's happening. Yeah, why not?
So
That
are
can
you
help
are
too.
you are you mostly asking like Michael, like are these parts of yourself interacting with each other, or are these parts interacting, say, with a therapist, or how does it work?
Yeah, I'm wondering at what point
Like
this
in-
is implemented.
Like in practice, what would this look like?
I believe, although I've never sat in practice, that it is the therapist having dialogue with the parts and finding out, because usually all the motivation is just to protect the self.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so the
So it's
therapist would be
you're
like,
trying to disarm the parts.
it would be like, firefighter, get in here, let's talk. Sort of.
Yeah,
maybe not
or
so many words.
who's here right now and what's going
now
on.
I see why you were kind of comparing it to dissociative identity disorder, which I think is the current term for what you
What did I
described
say?
before as
Personality,
multiple
multiple-
personality
yeah.
disorder.
Have
yeah.
we recategorized it?
I'm old hat.
All I know is I've seen Split starring James McAvoy about 3 times now. It's a masterpiece. It's an M. Night Shyamalan film. I cannot recommend it enough.
It was
especially-
very good.
Especially,
The ending is odd.
it's good in quotation marks.
The ending, though, is very weird if you've not seen, like, slight spoilers, Unbreakable.
I
Because
have not.
then you're just like, why is Bruce Willis here?
Well, now you just spoiled Split for everybody. The best film of our generation.
Okay. I did say slight spoilers to... Anyway, so in the case of this, it's within the confines of therapy.
Yeah.
These conversations with these 3 factions are being discussed, as opposed to in your day-to-day life, you just are like stopping, taking stock, and going.
I mean, I think that would be helpful too. I'm not sure how much that is part of the practice, but it would be like through the guidance of the therapist, they would interact with these parts, disarm them in order to get to the exile,
Mhm.
and release it from its moment of trauma.
Oh, gotcha. So it's like basically like these other 2 are like in the way of
Well, you
like,
just need to convince them
presence?
that it's safe and that they don't, because usually they're just trying to protect.
So in this,
Okay.
instance, or not necessarily in this instance, or is it like a blanket of exile is always needed to be disarmed, as opposed to just identified?
I think it's more the other 2 parts that need to be disarmed. The exile just needs to be, well, I guess also disarmed in a way. It's true. But maybe just like
I just wasn't sure
coaxed
if
out.
I wasn't sure if there's like
Or soothed.
one that is exclusively negative, or if they're all sorts of problems and it's just a matter of getting everybody at like 33.33% of managing the person.
Oh, I see.
They all have different tactics. So I guess it matters. It depends like if the tactics are healthy. And also like I think that often they'll think they got to the exile, but it's really just another defender mimicking to try to not let you get
It's another
there.
mask that you take off and you keep being like, Old Man Willikers, but it's not Old Man Willikers.
Because if it's
actually
really
a ghost. But no, wait, it's not a ghost. It's actually Old Man Willikers.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Old Man Willikers.
He pulled a fast one on you.
So in this one, this is going to be the one where you're going to see some of the less healthy coping mechanisms.
Right.
We're talking
Violence.
firefighters?
Mhm,
Yeah.
Going back to firefighter.
Gotcha.
It could be like just knee-jerk anger reactions too.
Oh, okay.
You know, just put it out, like, yeah.
So far that's why I was asking, like, are these all bad things? Because it sounds like the first one we had was like very fear activated. This one seems more anger activated.
I think they're all based in fear, actually, in a way, a fear of being overwhelmed. But it's like the tactics can be positive. Like
Sure.
some people resort to mania to avoid, what's really happening. Like,
Yeah.
Because you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like, so the exile part of you is all the stuff that like is so painful or complicated that you just would rather not even deal with it.
Yeah.
And then the firefighter is like all of the ways that you just go about not thinking about or not even getting to thinking about the fact that you're not thinking about this stuff. So like I'm gonna go and drink, like a fifth of whiskey so that I don't have to think about the fact that my mom don't love me, like that sort
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That seems like in that instance, the firefighter and the exile are like, let's join hands and go off and do this a little bit, or like drag the other.
Or it's more just like the firefighter's a quick fix, right?
Yeah. Quick fix. Yeah.
I see.
So the firefighter's just like, stay in there. We're going to do this.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So it's a Gryffindor, right?
La-di-da, la-di-da.
Yeah, it would be a Gryffindor, right? Because like Gryffindors, they tend to really just like not really think about their actions
They're
before they do
the
it.
leap before they look. They're
Mhm.
brash. They are emotionally driven.
Yeah, and like very spectacle driven between among the four houses.
Yeah.
Cool.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then finally we have managers, correct?
Managers. So that's what you were talking about before. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be Ravenclaw, but
I mean, just based off of the name, it seems to make me assume that. But tell us about managers.
It's the more long-term strategies of keeping the exiles at bay.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like the daily logical ways, like where it's like you're not necessarily activated in a moment of trauma. It's just like the consistent like repression and like consistent habits of keeping it repressed.
Okay. And then, so yeah, I mean, is there anything more that we think would maybe skew this out of Ravenclaw?
I think it mostly comes down to the fact that like this is really like the thing that runs your life from day to day, whereas like firefighters are probably coming in more of times of like, oh, big flare-ups happening.
Crisis, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm really activated in some way, whereas like the manager person's going to be like, okay, well, we'll stop taking your medication so that we can go out and see people and not feel like a zombie, or we'll take the medication so that we can actually get our work done. And it's like trying to find that balance is what the manager usually tries to do, right?
Yeah.
Just based on what I was reading a little bit about. So feel free to be like, no,
No, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
read more than a Wikipedia page before you speak with authority.
No, that is what it is. Yeah, it's the more cerebral approach to managing the everyday and keeping the exiles at bay.
But can it actually be like not necessarily the healthiest, or can it be like toxic coping mechanisms that
Definitely,
are just day to day?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like anybody who just goes like, these are the things that I'm going to do. We're going to go from A to B to C and ignore the emotion. When you're ignoring the emotion, you're repressing and letting other issues sort of mount.
I see.
Probably.
Yeah, well, and that's where I wouldn't put drinking necessarily as only a firefighter strategy, because it's like if it's a daily small dose, then that's more of a manager habit to me.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
So
Mhm.
like just the fact that I just say like, I just need to have a little ice cream. every day. I just need it. It's good for my soul. That'd be more of like a manager thing than a.
It depends what just happened to you.
And then and then the firefighters, when I like convince myself that I can do that, like if you can eat the 72-ounce ice cream bowl in one sitting, then you get it for free. And I'm like, this will fix my marriage.
Yeah, that sounds firefighter-y to me. And also delicious.
So we have successfully sorted all the 3 branches within the internal family systems.
Unless you want to go to the self, but I don't know if you could sort the self.
What do you mean?
Because the self is just presence. So that's like what's underneath everything.
I mean,
because like ultimately with the model, you're aiming for self-leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I'm not sure if you can categorize that because it's
like,
just presence.
Is that a challenge, Rena?
Oh, maybe it is.
You coming on here and saying we can't? Is there more?
Can you? I don't know. Is that just the magic in Harry Potter?
You think you're so fucking clever.
Just the magic. Maybe it's the hat.
Is the self kind of like the ecosystem or like the company that all of these other people are working at, and like the child, like somebody is who's like it's their first day every day and they're scared, so they're in a broom closet and everyone else is running around trying to do everything.
Now I forget which episode that this was, but we definitely had an episode where we were like, oh, multiple things are filtered through, and when we got through all of them, we were like, oh, it gave us and I believe it was also, as I'm seeing it, a Hufflepuff.
Oh.
I think if you are getting to the self in its like tranquil state, that's probably Hufflepuff.
Really?
Mm.
I think so.
Hufflepuff is the best.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I mean, I know that I'm obviously preaching to at least one member of the choir, maybe 2. We don't know. Hashtag sort Rena or Rena sorted.
Rena sorted.
Rena sorted what I initially said. If you send us the other one, it's fine. Just tweet at us. It's fine.
Because would this self be like your self-actualized self, or like even you're not even putting that kind of like qualifier on it?
There's not even a qualifier. It's just, well, I mean, it's the belief is that the self will always have like the healthiest instincts. So it's like the belief that, which is what I like about this model, that like everybody underneath everything has healthy, kind, positive instincts.
So it's like without taking any of your coping mechanism stuff into account. It's just like, I'll just know what's best for me.
You'll
naturally.
intuitively know. Yeah. If you can uncover all the layers, then you can get, but it's like, and then that's not something that needs to be disarmed ever. It's just always fine.
Gotcha.
Like,
you don't ever need to disarm a Hufflepuff. They aren't going to fight you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're already just like there in touch with our feelings.
That's what I mean. Like that's why I feel that the self in this instance, at least, would be defined as at least of the 4 houses most Hufflepuff in nature.
Yeah, I think so. Anytime that you have like people who are like, your feelings are valid, probably a Hufflepuff. And at least in the universe of Harry Potter, where like there's just a lot going on.
Fair enough. Well, I guess you did it. You beat the challenge. I didn't think it could happen. I didn't.
Oh, ye of little faith.
I do have very little faith in life.
But I would like to thank you for joining us, coming on, and helping us sort. Rena, if we want to find more of you, where might we look?
Just find me on Twitter.
Okay.
It's at RENAHUNDERT.
At your name?
I tweet. It's at my name.
Mm-hmm.
How very wild and original.
Yeah, I tweet bad jokes every day if you like those. So
and then around when is Broke LA happening?
It's April 21st and 22nd at the Regent Theater.
Okay.
There's music, comedy. It's an alternative for people who can't afford to go to Coachella. So everybody.
You're hosting the comedy stage for that stuff, right?
Yeah, I'll be hosting the comedy stage on the Saturday and the Sunday. I'm not sure what time, but there's a lot of great comedians, great musicians. Come check it out.
Yeah.
If you'd like to be following myself or Reed, you can follow us at Belated Media or That Dang Dingus, respectively, on Twitter. You can also follow Sorting Hat _pod on Twitter to participate in any of our daily sorting polls or just be kept up to date and communicate with us.
Yeah, we're also at the end of April going to be at Playlist Live. So if you're there in Orlando and you want to see us, you can tweet us and maybe we'll wave at you or something.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a live sorting panel with a subject that is yet to be determined, but it should be fun and
it'll
goofy.
It'll be exciting.
So thank you all again so much for joining us, and we'll You'll hear from us next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.